The damp chill had already seeped into my bones, a constant companion even before the sun had fully abandoned the sky. My breath plumed in the twilight, each exhalation a ghostly cloud against the encroaching mist. This was it, the Ridge Runner's Gauntlet. An unofficial record, sure, but a record nonetheless. Every muscle in my legs screamed, a dull, insistent ache that had become as familiar as my own heartbeat. I pushed harder, the rhythm of my pounding feet a solitary drum against the mountain's vast, unyielding silence. I'd been out here for nearly 24 hours, the fog rolling in thick and unseasonable just after noon. It clung to everything, a suffocating blanket that swallowed the peaks and bled into the valleys, turning the world into a muted, gray canvas. The air hung heavy, smelling of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else, something cold and metallic, like distant rain on old iron. My headlamp cut a meager tunnel through the swirling whiteness, illuminating only the immediate stretch of the treacherous, unmarked trail ahead. I welcomed the isolation, craved it. Out here, deep in the forgotten spine of the mountains, far from any established path or rescue, it was just me, the elements, and the raw, undeniable truth of my own limits. This was where clarity was found, where the noise of the world faded, leaving only the grind. But the clarity was beginning to fray. It started subtly, a ripple in the fabric of my practiced focus. About 6 hours ago, deep in a particularly choked ravine where the mist lay thickest, I saw them. Fresh footprints. Impossibly large, far too wide for any man, even one wearing bulky hiking boots. And they were ahead of me. My headlamp had caught them just as the ground began to slope upwards, each impression disturbingly deep in the soft earth. I stopped, my heart thudding against my ribs, a sudden frantic rhythm against the steady drum of my run. I was alone out here. Had to be. No one else was foolish enough or obsessed enough to be this deep, especially not in this fog. I dismissed it as fatigue, a trick of the light, an old bear print perhaps, distorted by the mist. I pushed on, forcing the image from my mind. But the feeling persisted. It was a sound more than anything, a low, guttural thrumming, like something heavy moving through dense underbrush. It wasn't the familiar rustle of a deer or the distant cry of a hawk. This was different. It was parallel to me, always there, just beyond the reach of my headlamp, through the impenetrable veil of mist. Sometimes it seemed to quicken, matching my pace, a phantom runner keeping time with my own exhausted strides. I'd whip my head around, peering into the swirling gray, convinced I'd catch a glimpse of whatever it was. Nothing. Just the endless, suffocating fog, muffling every sound, amplifying my own labored breathing until it felt deafening. The silence of the mountain had been a comfort before, a backdrop for my own thoughts. Now it was oppressive, pregnant with unseen movement. The trail itself began to twist, to betray me. I knew these ridges, or at least I thought I did. I'd studied maps for weeks, memorized every contour, every landmark, but the fog had stolen them all. The familiar moss-covered boulder I expected after a sharp incline never appeared. The distinctive triple-trunked pine that marked the descent into Widow's Creek was nowhere to be found. Instead, the path seemed to loop back on itself, or veer sharply in directions I didn't recognize. My sense of direction, honed by years of wilderness running, began to warp. Was I going in circles? Was I simply more disoriented than I realized? A desperate laugh bubbled up in my throat, quickly choked off by the dry, dusty taste of exhaustion. My legs were numb, heavy logs dragging beneath me. Every breath was a rasp, every heartbeat a dull ache spreading through my chest. The air still carried that strange metallic tang, stronger now, almost like the smell of a forgotten, rusted trap. Then, the whispers started. They weren't words, not exactly. More like a sibilant hiss, a low, drawn-out sigh that seemed to weave itself into the very fabric of the fog. It was everywhere and nowhere, brushing against my ears, a chilling caress that raised goosebumps on my arms despite the exertion. It sounded hungry, or perhaps simply amused. I stumbled, catching myself on a slippery root. My vision blurred for a moment, the world tilting precariously. My mind, usually a fortress of discipline, felt like a sandcastle slowly eroding under a relentless tide. The thought, cold and sharp, pierced through the haze. What if it's not just the fog? What if something is doing this? The idea was absurd. I was a runner, a pragmatist. Mountains were mountains, fog was fog. There was no malevolent presence. But the footprints, the echoing thrumming, the shifting trail. A cold dread began to coil in my stomach, distinct from the physical agony. It was the terror of being hunted, not by a bear or a wolf, but by something unseen, something tireless and utterly patient. The thing paralleling me through the trees now felt closer, its guttural movements more defined. I could almost feel its presence, a heavy, suffocating pressure just beyond my peripheral vision. I forced myself to run faster, a desperate lurching sprint fueled by pure, unadulterated terror. The ground beneath my feet felt increasingly uneven, loose stones giving way to slick mud. My headlamp beam danced wildly, illuminating fleeting glimpses of gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers from the mist. The air grew colder, heavy with a dampness that felt less like water and more like a clammy breath against my skin. Suddenly, the trail vanished. One moment, I was running on a clear path. The next, my foot plunged into empty space. I fell, tumbling down a short, steep embankment, my body slamming against rough earth and sharp rocks. A searing pain shot through my ankle. I lay there for a moment, gasping, the metallic taste of blood filling my mouth from biting my tongue. My headlamp had spun off, its weak beam pointing uselessly into the sky. Darkness. Absolute, suffocating darkness, broken only by the swirling gray of the fog above me. And then, just above me, at the top of the embankment, I heard it. A rustle, heavy and deliberate. A low, wet sniff. And then, a sound that made the blood freeze in my veins. A soft, guttural chuckle, like stones grinding together, muffled by the fog, but unmistakably close. It was laughing at me. I scrambled backwards, dragging my injured leg, digging my fingers into the cold, damp earth. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My breath hitched in my throat, ragged and loud in the oppressive silence. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there, a looming, unseen presence, silhouetted against the indifferent gray. I could feel its gaze, a weight on my skin, prickling and cold. This wasn't clarity. This was a nightmare. The wilderness, my sanctuary, had turned against me. My body was failing, my mind was unraveling, and something unspeakable was playing with my exhaustion, toying with my diminishing sanity. I was lost, injured, and very, very alone, with a silent, unseen runner for company, deep in the mist-shrouded heart of a mountain that now felt profoundly, terrifyingly alive. And it was just getting started.